Hey, it's Kev here, and I'm here to talk about the sequel to X-Men First Class. Now, I first got into X-Men when I started watching the movies. I'd seen the animated series when I was a kid, and I thought it was a bit naff, but I really liked the first two movies that were directed by Bryan Singer. I didn't really like the change in direction they took on the third one with Brett Ratner. I wasn't a big fan of that movie. Um, X Men Origins Wolverine, it was better than X Men 3, but it was by no means a return to form. And it kind of fucked up the timeline of the series anyway. So, um, I didn't have much hope for the X Men franchise after that, but then I saw First Class and I thought it was an amazing film. I was a big fan of Matthew Vaughn. I really liked Layer Cake and Kick Ass, and the film's been very successful, and it's pretty much confirmed at this stage that there will be a sequel in sooner or later. Um, so Matthew Vaughn has been pitching ideas to Fox, and apparently they've got Simon Kenberg as one of the script writers. He's the only one who's been announced so far, but as long as Matthew Vaughn, Jane Goldman, and Bryan Singer come back, I'm pretty sure it will be awesome. Um, anyway, Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy have been saying that a lot of the focus in this movie will be on Charles Xavier. In the last movie, we saw him be crippled when shot in the spine by a bullet that Eric Magneto deflected. So he's now wheelchair bound, and we're going to see him dealing with that. Not only is he physically paralyzed, he's also emotionally traumatized by what happened because it was because of his best friend that he ended up in this situation. His best friend, who is now his enemy, um, and he had to wipe the mind of the woman he cared for, Moira McTaggart, played by Rose Byrne, in order to avoid being given away, any risk of being given away. So now Charles has started the X Men, and on his side he's got Hank McCoy, Beast, who is played by Nicholas Hoult, Lucas Till, Havoc, who's played by Alex Summers, Havoc, who's played by Lucas Till, and Sean Cassidy, Banshee, who's played by Caleb Andrew Jones. Eric has already become Magneto at this stage, as we saw in the last movie, and so the focus this time around is watching Charles become Professor X, and Eric, after killing Sebastian Shaw, who was played by Kevin Bacon, he's started up the Brotherhood, which consists of himself, Charles' stepsister, Raven Darkholme, Mystique, who's played by Jennifer Lawrence, Emma Frost, who's played by January Jones, Azazel, played by Jason Fleming, Angel Salvador, who's played by Zoe Kravitz, and Janos Quested, aka Riptide, who is played by Alex Gonzalez. Um, anyway, there's been a lot of talk about what direction this movie could go in. Matthew Vaughn said that he'd like to set it in the latter part of the 60s with the Stones, the Beatles, Flower Power, that kind of movement. Bryan Singer said that it could be set around the Vietnam War or the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement part would be pretty interesting because we'll also see the mutants trying to fight for their place in the world for equality. Um, Vaughn said that an interesting idea he had for the opening scene of this movie would be to show JFK's assassination and reveal that Magneto was the one controlling the bullet that killed him, which I think is a pretty cool idea. Um, and Lauren Shuler Donner, who's the producer of the movie, said that it could be set in the 70s. So they seem kind of conflicted about their ideas, but hopefully they'll be able to come to an agreement. Um, and I'm kind of wondering how will this one tie into the previous X-Men movies, because I don't know if a lot of people came to the same conclusion as I did, but I kind of got the impression that First Class was only a prequel to the first two movies directed by Bryan Singer and kind of retconned the other ones, because like in X Men 3 and X Men Origins we see Xavier middle aged and walking and still being friends with Magneto, whereas in First Class he becomes crippled and he's no longer friend. And by the end of it, they're no longer friends. Um, Emma Frost was a teenager in Origins, despite the fact that it's set in around the 3 Mile Island accident in 1979, whereas First Class is around the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Um, Beast's appearance in First Class was very different to how he looked in in X-Men: The Last Stand. And Moira appeared to be around 30 in 1962, whereas in X-Men 3, which is set in the 21st century, she only looks like she's in her late 40s or the 50s when she should really be around 70. So um, I really think it only ties into the first two movies, but despite that, there are still continuity errors. For instance, in the first X-Men movie, Charles said that he met Eric when he was 17. In the second one, Beast looks human, whereas in First Class we see him become a blue creature. And there's a few other things like that, but Hugh Jackman has said that he'd like to come back for the sequel. He's supposed to be working on the Wolverine right now, which I'm not really looking forward to be honest. It just sounds like it's going to be another dumb action movie. But he said he'd like to come back and do the sequel to First Class if the idea they have is as good as the last one. But I kind of wonder what new characters will be introduced in this one, because Matthew Vaughn said that well, since Charles Xavier is crippled in this one, Magneto kind of needs an enemy, someone who's his equal, someone who's going to pose a real threat. So there's been speculation that there might be Apocalypse or Mr. Sinister. I don't if it is one of those guys. I'm not really sure who could play them, but it'd be cool if it was someone from one of the previous Vaughn movies, because he works with a very good list of actors. And one thing I really want to see in this one is to kind of explain how Havoc and Cyclops are related, because in the comics they were brothers, Alex being the younger and Scott being the older, but that obviously isn't the case in First Class. So it'd be really cool if they answered that question. And also the whole thing, obviously, with Mystique and Azazel being on the same side at the end of the last movie, they were setting up the conception of Nightcrawler. So I'd say that could happen in this movie, but I wouldn't say he'd be like First Class was planned as the first of a trilogy, so I wouldn't say he'll be born until the third movie. And another thing is the whole thing of Xavier losing his hair. I doubt that'll happen until the third one either. But like pretty much the entire cast are signed on for 3 movies, so I'd say it'd be pretty cool to see them all come back. Might not happen for a while though, because they've all got different projects to work in. January Jones doing the new season of Mad Men. Nicholas Holt's in Jack the Giant Killer. Himself and Zoe Kravitz are meant to be doing Mad Max Fury Road if it ever goes ahead, because it's been delayed so many times. But like, I'd like to see a bit more focus on some of the other characters in this movie. Hopefully they get more than they did last time. Like, a lot of people weren't happy with the way January Jones portrayed Emma Frost. You know, just this really an ice queen, I suppose. She was really heartless piece of really an eye candy henchwoman. But January Jones said that she'd like to show a bit more humanity with the character in this one, which I think is it should be pretty interesting. And well, we didn't. Azazel is pretty much just like an assassin in the last movie who didn't say very much. So hopefully he'll get more character development in this one, and I hope that Riptide actually gets to speak this time around, because he did it in the last movie. But I suppose that was mostly because the actor didn't speak much English at the time that they shot it. And I'd like to see what happens with some of the other characters like Banshee and Angel, and see how Beast copes with the situation that he's in with his newfound appearance. And well, I'd really like to see what kind of historical event they explore in this one, because basing it around the Cuban Missile Crisis in the last one was very clever. So hopefully it'll be some kind of huge event that could have potentially changed the course of history. But I still think they should totally ignore the third movie and X Men Origins, because X Men Origins kind of fucked up the timeline a bit. Like in the first movie, Charles says that Logan has been a drifter for 15 years, and Stryker said the same thing in X Men Two. But like the finales of of X Men Origins is set around the 3 Mile Island incident, which happened in 1979. But that would mean the first movie happened in 1994, which is shit because it says at the start of each of the trilogy that it's set in the not too distant future. So they kind of made a bollocks of it there. Um, and I'd really like to see if the characters' loyalties are tested in this one. Like Emma Frost famously at one point joined the X Men in the comic books, and Lucas Till said that he'd like to see um, some changes in Havoc in the next one. Maybe see him join the Brotherhood, and Rose Byrne says that she doesn't think. Well, she's signed on for 3 movies, and she says that she doesn't see that being the end of the romance between Moira and Charles. So I'd say she'll probably be back. And um, one thing I'm kind of wondered about is whether Kevin Bacon and Eddie Gathegi can come back. Well, I know I pretty much established that Shaw is dead without a doubt, but he was a very powerful businessman and he had a lot of influence. So I think in the next one they might have the Brotherhood could like have Mystique imitate him as and use his influence to their advantage. So I think Kevin Bacon could make a return in the next one, and Darwin, his situation is a bit mysterious because I know he after he was attacked by Shaw, he kind of burned away to nothing, but his mutation was adapt to survive. So there's some speculation that he might have just turned his body into pure energy, and that he might and they might return to it at some point. So there is a chance we could see him in the sequel. Um, and also, one thing I've always wondered about is that girl Amy, who was played by Annabelle Wallis, that Charles flirted with at the bar in Oxford, the girl who had heterochromia. I've kind of wondered because of one of her eyes being green and the other one being blue, could she be the mother of Jason Stryker? Because he had heterochromia, and his eyes were the same color as in X Men Two. So, and that girl Amy looks pretty much the same age that William Stryker would be at that stage. So, I think it'd be pretty cool cool if they established that at some point. And another thing that from the comic books that I wonder if it'll be featured in this one is Juggernaut, because in the comic books he was Xavier's stepbrother. Like we know that in X Men First Class, Xavier Xavier had a stepsister who was of course Mystique, but there was no mention of of him having a stepbrother. He did mention, however, to Havoc at one point that his stepfather was terrified of the thought of nuclear war. So I kind of wonder if they could bring in Kane Marco in the next one, and maybe have him join the Brotherhood or something along those lines. But I know Vinnie Jones already played Juggernaut in the third one, but if if these movies do retcon that one, that would technically mean his version of Juggernaut doesn't exist. So they'd have a chance to recreate the character. So I think it'd be pretty cool if they did something like that. Well, that's pretty much all I have to say. Thanks for listening.